All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be detectives. But our mystery, it's not at a crime scene. No, it's hidden away in a stack of paper, a single patient's clinical records. We are going to piece together a story of a really confusing diagnosis, a whole lot of doubt, and a hidden reality that, well, it seems like it was kept out of sight on purpose. Let's just start right here. This one sentence from the patient. I mean, it gets to the absolute heart of this entire story. It just perfectly captures this central conflict, right? A person whose own lived experience is being turned around and used as evidence against them. So how on earth did things get to this point?
You know, every story has an official version. And in this case, that version was written by the lead clinician, a man we'll call Dr. P. And he built a very, very specific narrative to explain what he thought was happening with his patient.
So the diagnosis at the very core of Dr. P's story is something called factitious disorder. Basically, what he concluded was that the patient was faking it, or at the very least, dramatically exaggerating her symptoms. He believed she was trying to seem more psychologically disturbed than she actually was, all to kind of fit into this sick role.
So his official story really rested on these four main pillars. He painted this picture of a patient who was an unreliable narrator of her own life, someone whose symptoms just didn't quite fit the textbook definition of dissociative identity disorder. And this is the real kicker, he claimed she weaponized the feeling of being disbelieved to push away any real questions.
And that feeling of not being believed, that brings us to the central clue in this entire mystery. See, Dr. P saw it as just another symptom, a part of her disorder. But we have to ask the question, what if it wasn't a symptom at all?
Let's just pause on this for a second, really think about it. If someone in a clinical setting constantly feels like people are doubting them, what are the real possibilities here? Is it paranoia, a sign of their illness? Or could it be that they actually aren't being believed? Well, Dr. P and his team, they went with option number one. They took the patient's completely predictable reaction to being doubted, and they called it a symptom, her agitation, her suspicion. They didn't see it as a response to her environment. No, they wrote it down as documented proof of a personality disorder.
And this is where our paper trail takes a huge, dramatic turn. Because buried in all these records is the story of a critical psychological report from 2019. A report that Dr. P would later claim was completely lost. And folks, this is the piece of evidence that changes everything.
So, here's the crucial point. In his final big, comprehensive report from 2023, Dr. P makes an official claim. He puts it in writing that the full 2019 psychological workup, which was a key baseline for this patient, is missing. It just could not be found. Gone. But here is the first just stunning contradiction. In the exact same report where he claims the 2019 file is missing, Dr. P quotes highly specific data points from that report. He's using its validity scores to argue the patient was exaggerating, all while claiming he couldn't find the very document he was pulling numbers from. It makes no sense.
And this really shows you what he chose to leave out. The so-called missing file had a perfect 30 out of 30 score on a cognitive assessment. This test measures memory, orientation, all that good stuff. A perfect score is objective proof of a clear mind, the exact opposite of a poor historian.
And the omissions just keep coming. That same 2019 report, it showed a prominent diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder. It validated the patient's trauma history from the very beginning. But in his 2023 summary, Dr. P conveniently ignored this, arguing instead that PTSD should be ruled out based on his own later tests. So you have to ask yourself, why would a clinician misrepresent the record this badly? Well, as we're about to see, the documents show he wasn't just leaving facts out. He was actively creating a kind of psychological trap for his patient. And this right here is the mechanism of that trap. Dr. P made a very specific clinical decision. He and the team were not to tell the patient that they believed she was faking her illness. And his reason? He thought if they told her, she'd just get better at faking. So they decided to actively deceive her, and they called it therapy. And this created a just devastating cycle. It's a perfect vicious circle. First, the team withholds the real diagnosis. Second, the patient, who is obviously smart and perceptive, senses she's not being taken seriously because, well, she isn't. Third, in her desperation to be heard and believed, her behaviors get bigger, more amplified. And fourth, the clinicians point to that exact amplification as objective proof that their secret diagnosis was right all along. They created the very evidence they needed.
Okay, so let's put it all together. The real power of digging through these files is when you put the official story right next to the actual data. When you do that, the inconsistencies become impossible to ignore.
I mean, look at this. It just lays it all out in stark contrast. The poor historian claim, completely dismantled by a perfect cognitive score. The attempt to rule out PTSD, it ignores the earlier prominent diagnosis. And this is so important. Her agitation is reframed not as a symptom of a disorder, but as a completely sane reaction to an insane situation. Even the idea that she faked symptoms for legal reasons is blown apart by the fact that her trauma was well documented before any arrest ever happened.
And this might be the most cynical twist in the whole loop. The patient, absolutely desperate to prove her experience was real, would bring notes, emails, even recordings to her sessions. But instead of seeing this as an attempt to create a shared, objective reality, Dr. P documented this very behavior as a common finding in malingerers. Her attempts to provide proof were twisted into the ultimate proof of her deception.
So why does this deep dive into one person's file really matter? Because this isn't just about clinical disagreements or messy paperwork. This is about the profound, real human cost that comes from controlling and distorting a person's reality.
And here's the tragic irony of it all. The very same 2019 report that Dr. P claimed was missing, it contained a chillingly accurate prediction. It literally warned that if this patient's support system got tired of her or started to disbelieve her, her grip on reality could completely fall apart. The disaster that happened wasn't just predictable, it was actually predicted.
Ultimately, the clinical team, led by Dr. P, manufactured a version of the patient that fit their diagnosis. They created a situation where her every logical, human reaction to being lied to was recorded as just another symptom on a chart. She was trapped in a box where the only way out was to agree with a story that she knew, in her bones, was false.
And that leaves us with this final question, doesn't it? Clinical records aren't just notes. They are the official story of a person's life. And in that delicate power balance, where one person holds the pen and the other holds all the pain, who is truly responsible for the truth? And what is the real cost when the story they decide to write is a lie?